Welcome to my kitchen, everyone. So we're making naan, dal, and raita. So dals are basically these legume dishes. Dals can cover any kind of bean dish, and they're usually simmered and they're really soft. Back that up with a naan, which is a bread. So if you take the grain and you combine it with the legume, you've got a complete protein. So let me start on the dal here by heating up my Dutch oven. Now, I like using really heavy cookware here because it's the perfect vessel to kind of simmer foods. I've got my masalas, my wet masala and my dry masala, and they need to be activated with oil. So I'm looking at my heat. I want to get this hot. Let me bring this back down to a medium now. All right, so that's at a good place. I'm going to be using canola oil. Now, we're always working from whole spices to ground spices. I'm going to start with my cumin seed because it's a whole seed. From there, I'm going to go to my ground spices. So my heat's looking pretty good. Let's go with the cumin seed and we'll put those in, and I want you to really kind of sit there and listen for these things to pop. I can start to see them sizzle. I can start to smell them. When you can start smelling these spices and they start to kind of dance around, that's a good place to be. Now, from there, I can go right on to my garam masala, which means hot masala or a hot spice. And after garam, I'm going to go to cayenne. Cayenne's going to give me a bit of heat as well. I need to move on to my wet masalas. I've got onions going in. Now the rest of my wet masala, I've got garlic and ginger. Let's get those in there. And this is about thyme. This is about caramelization, really bringing out the sugars in all these wet masalas. So this is exactly where I want my onions and my garlic because all the sugars have been drawn out. All those harsh flavors of the onions are gone. It's basically just really wonderful, sweet, sugary, almost like a chutney flavor going on here. So it's time for the dal. Now these are crimson dals. It's basically a peel dal, and they're actually kind of crimson and red inside, but when they cook up, they'll cook up kind of yellow. So prepare yourself for that. So the dals are in. Now they have been rinsed through one time. Water's going in now. And I haven't really turned the heat down. And you hear that? That's that sizzle of the moisture hitting the pan. That's also going to help lift off a lot of that flavor that's kind of been stuck to the bottom of the pan. Perfect. The natural pair with that will actually be turmeric. Indians always use a bit of turmeric in their dals for two reasons. Turmeric is actually a natural antiseptic, and it's also anti-inflammatory. So let me turn this down to a simmer, and then let's move on to our naan. So naan is basically a bread that can be eaten every day as a nice accompaniment. It's usually made with any kind of flour, but usually white flour. I want to kick up the nutrition and actually use wheat flour. So I'm going to go 50-50 because I want that nice soft texture, yet I still want the health benefits of wheat flour. It's very simple. We're going to go wets and dries. So let's combine all the dries first. I've got all-purpose flour, and I'll leave some for my bench flour, meaning my rolling out flour, and I've got wheat flour. And I'm about 50-50. A little bit of cornmeal. Now I've got salt, of course, for flavor. Sugar is going to work with the yeast to kind of get a nice chewy texture. A little bit of baking soda. And lastly, rapid rise yeast. That's going to go right in there. So let's bring those together just to make our non-dry mix. Let's work on the wets now. I've got my thermometer in here because I want to make sure my water's at about 100 to 105 degrees. That's that perfect temperature where the yeast is going to start activating and start really bringing all these wets and dries and getting some bubbles in there to get a nice soft naan. So I've got some yogurt. This is just plain yogurt now in. I've got a little bit of oil. Now I'm using olive oil just to kind of change it up and keep it healthy as well. And then lastly, an egg. So I've got my egg in. Now taking a whisk, I can do the little kind of tornado whisk. Now remember, this liquid mixture is at about 105 degrees. Now I'm going to start building a bread. I'm going to make a little well in the middle here and then bring in the wet slowly. Now you're not going to use all the wet sometimes. It's a good idea to always use about 75 of the wets to the dry. And then just kind of start working it together slowly. I'm not using my hands yet because I don't want flour all over. I know I'm gonna need a little more here, just by feel. I'm just looking for all the flour to bind up with all the liquid. This can be done in a mixer, but I kind of like the feel of it because I want to kind of feel the dough and make sure it's not too tight or not too loose. Excellent. So I'm just going to take my hands, flour them up slightly, and just start pushing this together. Now, keep flour all over. We call this bench flour. Keep it on your hands, keep it on the board, and it keeps things nice and tidy. So now I'm going to start to just work it in. And only add flour as you need because you don't want to get to that point where it's too dry. You want this dough ball to kind of be that perfect place where it's staying together, it's just moist enough. Now I'll show you a little trick to kind of pull it together. Using the friction of the board, I'm just rounding it so it comes together into a nice little package. The seam's at the bottom and where it should be. And I'm gonna throw it right in. And I wanna cover this, but I'm just gonna use a little wet towel here. And that's gonna do its thing. Let's check on the doll really quick. So I've loosened up the bottom. I'm gonna let that continue to cook. That's looking really close. So when we come back, I'm gonna show you how to portion out that naan bread and we're gonna make our raita. I'll see you in a little bit.